this is the way to get started. If I don't have much money, if I don't have much experience, I don't need any sort of certificates. I just can just start today. The five main things I would say is you're the host, you manage the guest communications, you manage the pricing, you make sure the cleaners show up and get paid. And if there's any maintenance, you just help to schedule the maintenance. None of this is out of pocket, right? So you're not paying the cleaners or the maintenance or even for the furniture. You are just there as a peace of mind service to make sure everything is just flowing smoothly.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Global Achievers. Today's episode is all about short-term rental management. Our guest today, Amanda Fardella, left her six-figure job at Amazon to become a full-time short-term rental manager. She has also developed a couple of different courses which can walk you through on how you can start this business with little to no investment. You can use our code, the S Factor, in order to get a discount when you sign up. All those links are in the description below. So stick around, we'll be right back with the interview. Hello, and welcome back. We have Amanda joining us from Pennsylvania. Amanda, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's sunny. It's the summer. Could be worse, right?
Okay, perfect. We are going to be talking about short-term rental management today, all about that. But usually the way I begin is just talking a little bit about your path. So I guess you went to school at Temple.
Yeah, Temple University, which is in Philadelphia, PA.
Okay, perfect. And once you were done with school, what are some of the jobs that you had?
So Temple, I graduated in 2014. So I can't believe it's already been like 10 years, kind of insane almost. But I graduated for marketing. So I actually wound up going into something a little bit different. I went into buying, which some people might be familiar with. It's retail. I was in the fashion space. And it was a lot of numbers and traveling. I went to New York about 4 days a week. And I really loved that job at that point in my life. You know, I was only like 21 and it made sense. I had a lot of energy for that. And then I wind up just doing that actually throughout my 20s until I was about 26. So I worked for 3 different companies. I was always in the buying space, and fashion was kind of like what I think we were driven to in college, a lot of us, and where our marketing degree was. So that's kind of where I ended up at that point.
Okay. When did you move to Seattle?
So I moved to Seattle in 2018, like early 2018. So yeah, at that point I was just turning 26. I worked for Burlington for a really long time, Burlington Coat Factory, which is now Burlington Stores, Party City. And then I got recruited actually from New Jersey, from Amazon in Washington, the headquarters. So it was all through LinkedIn, and it was obviously a very big number of a salary for me at 26. So I just left everything behind and I went right out to Washington alone, pretty much.
Okay.
For my career.
All right. So you are a marketing manager at Amazon, a senior marketing manager, correct?
Right. Correct.
Okay. So 6 figures at the age of 26, moved to a new city. How was your experience working at Amazon?
I think Amazon as a company really actually helps in far as like, I guess it's hard to describe. It was a totally new atmosphere for me. I think like I went from always being a big fish in a small pond in these smaller companies. And then when you go to a company like Amazon, it's the total opposite, where you're like a very small fish in a big pond. So I think the atmosphere of the company was overwhelming in a good way. I think that they teach you a ton, a lot of independence. So there's no micromanaging. It was a good atmosphere as far as growing as somebody who was 26 in my career. So I do appreciate them in a lot of ways, but the work-life balance was tough. I think that was the deciding factor to where I am today, where I think the company is built off of young people who have a very type A driven mindset. So there was a lot of people who were just like me, who were trying to climb the corporate ladder. And so it automatically kind of built this sense of work was the focus of life. And there really was no time to actually have the life that you would want, like traveling, leisure, social. It just really didn't provide that type of atmosphere.
Okay. And I guess in some ways that kind of drew you towards short-term rental management. So tell us about your first experience with that.
So I think like when I moved there, I again loved it at first. I worked there for a couple of years, over almost 3 years actually. Around like my second year mark, I think I just at that point COVID was about to hit. And so I think when COVID hit, I just kind of really got this like sense of okay, I'm not commuting, I have extra time. I don't, as much as I am grateful for where I was and the money I was making, it just wasn't something I saw myself doing forever. Like I wanted to settle down. I want to have kids one day. I want to be able to travel and do the things that I want to do. And so at the same time as me being grateful for Amazon, I also feel like having a job where you're lacking work-life balance, it kind of pushes you more into entrepreneurship. So I think that that's really what pushed me is just lack of being able to disconnect. Like even when I wasn't at work, I was thinking about work. I was getting messages about work. I was still getting messages even when I was traveling on vacations. Like it just wasn't the ideal mindset. So I think like for me, even though I loved again the opportunity, it just was not sustainable. And so that really pushed me into entrepreneurship because when you see the writing on the wall, it's kind of like, okay, I'm about to be 30 soon. Like I know this isn't the lifestyle I want. Even though it's the money you want, it's not the lifestyle you want. So you just come down to questioning like what's more important, you know, like just being stuck with the salary that you like or trying to make something of yourself and have the life that you actually want as well.
Okay. So speaking of entrepreneurship, why short-term rental management?
So I think for me, with that point, I knew I wanted to be involved in real estate. I think like I didn't, and this is just being honest, I didn't have like a huge passion, right? I wasn't like loving to draw or loving, you know, creating a product or product management. Like there was nothing that I was like, this is the business I'm going to do. So what can I do as somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur but doesn't know like where to start? So real estate, I think, provides a lot of opportunities. And obviously we see a lot of that online where it's like the fix and flip and it's on TV. But I didn't have the capital at that time or the experience to just like start buying houses, especially in the Seattle market where it's one of the most expensive cities in the country. So it's like, it's not nearly as easy as like we would hope it would be. So I think rental management, I actually came across it in a podcast similar to kind of this situation. And there was somebody actually who wound up being involved in managing properties. So they didn't have to actually buy the properties or be in leases, which is called rental arbitrage. So it was like a totally different model. So it kind of just planted the seed in my head that this is the way to get started. If I don't have much money, if I don't have much experience, I don't need any sort of certificates. I just can just start today. So that's kind of where that came from.
Okay. And what was the first sort of property that you managed?
So my first property in Seattle was a mother-in-law unit. So it's actually a really nice guy. He had a house that had 2 units. There was also a top floor and a bottom floor. So essentially a duplex. The top floor had long-term tenants living in it. It was a family. And he actually remodeled the downstairs for when his mom would come and visit from the Philippines. So he didn't really want anybody to live there, but he wanted to pay his mortgage. So I actually wound up talking to him about it. He posted something on Facebook. I met up with him, and short-term rentals was perfect for him because he can use the house when he wanted, but also make money on it. And that was my first unit. So it was the smallest 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, like maybe 550 square feet. And that was my first one.
Okay. So just break it down for us.
Yeah.
Tell me what the business is all about. How does one go about making money?
Okay, this is the best part. So the business is pretty simple. At the end of the day, there's a homeowner investor who has a house. they don't want to deal, they want it to run as a short-term rental because statistically, short-term rentals make 1.5 to 3 times more than a long-term renter on average. So they want to make the extra money, but they don't want to deal with managing it. So what that would mean is being the host online. So when you go on Airbnb and you went to go book a house, someone's obviously hosting that house. So that would be me as the host. I would do all the guest communications. I would schedule the cleaners, make sure the cleaners get paid. If the guests have any questions, obviously it's just through the phone, right? So if you're staying at an Airbnb and you have a question, you text the host through the app. I would get those messages and I would just respond to them and manage the process. So the 5 main things I would say is you're the host, you manage the guest communications, you manage the pricing, you make sure the cleaners show up and get paid. And if there's any maintenance, you just help to schedule the maintenance. None of this is out of pocket, right? So you're not paying the cleaners or the maintenance or even for the furniture. You are just there as a peace of mind service to make sure everything is just flowing smoothly. And that's pretty much the end of it. I mean, there's obviously a lot of pieces in between, but that's really the holistic circle of what that looks like.
Okay. So if I were to break it down even more, just to simplify it, right? So you have the homeowner, you have the guest, and the rental management person is in the middle, correct?
Exactly.
So obviously there's no investment from the rental management side. It's just the management of the property, correct?
Yep, exactly. Okay. So it's essentially the same exact thing as what a long-term renter management would be, right? Like you have the homeowner that's a long-term tenant, they hire a management company because they live out of state and they don't want to deal with the questions if they have any or if anything happens. It's exactly the same thing. It's just short-term rental management is just more of a newer profession because short-term rentals have grown so much. So it's really the same basic concept. It's just short-term rental management. The beautiful part is we get paid more because there's obviously more turnover when people are just coming for the weekend versus somebody signing a 12-month lease, you know?
Mm-hmm. So speaking of growth, I understand that you did really well in your first year in 2021.
Yes, I did. So I actually wound up, so I started the company in June of 2020. That's when I got my first client. So I guess technically it was May. I got my first client, my first 30 days. It was literally through Facebook. It was very easy conversion. I decided my lease was up actually Labor Day of 2020. And I decided that Amazon was pretty much permanently work from home at that time. I was paying like $2,500 a month in rent. So I decided to just come back to where I was from and start my business over here because there's a large short-term rental market where I live right now too. So I came home, I kind of restarted my whole thing, right? So like September 2020, I had to restart. I had to obviously build new connections in Pennsylvania because I had just moved and my whole connection base was in Seattle. And in my first 12 months, so from September to September 2021, I had already a dozen properties in my first year. And I also was working at Amazon the entire time. So it was honestly just like a very crazy time in my life. But yeah, I think like to have 12 properties in my first year was more than I could have imagined or hoped for. So it was the perfect time to get started.
Okay. And 12 property management equals to how much in revenue?
So my profit per year is what you're asking. Mm-hmm. So I actually replaced my income. So my goal before quitting Amazon was to make 75% of my income, which obviously give and take a little bit, but 100,000, let's just say. In my first year, I made over 90,000 gross just from my Airbnb. So that doesn't even count for the rest of my income. So yeah, and then obviously this year I have more houses than I did last year. So it just keeps growing from there.
Okay. So what does one actually need in order to get started?
Honestly, the only thing that you need is ambition. And I know that might sound corny, but it's so true because you don't need anything It's not like you need a degree to do this or some sort of certification or license. You just learn it. You learn how to grow the business, learn how to do the whole Airbnb thing, do the listing, do the pricing, learn how to be good at this. And then you can just, as you obviously, when I started too, like everyone has that fake it till you make it. In the beginning, you got your first client. I learned more. I got my second. I learned more. And I just kept growing. It's obviously been over 2 years now. But the only thing that you really need is the want to do this, because it's something that anybody can really do.
Okay. Speaking of sort of education, learning, and sort of fast tracking your own knowledge, you have gone on to develop a couple of different courses, which people can actually take and gain a lot of knowledge about this business. Because at the end of the day, let's face it, not everyone is a self-starter. Not everyone's going to go out there and just post an ad and see what happens and just take it from there and learn as they grow, right? A lot of people may actually value some structured knowledge and learning to getting there. So tell us about the programs that you have developed.
Sure. And I also want to say, I actually hired a mentor too to do this. Like, I actually was so determined that when I listened to that podcast, I actually kind of found this person on Facebook and asked her to teach me just the basics of what this was so I can get started. So even for me, like, I was so determined, but I did obviously need some knowledge to get started. I couldn't have started and been as successful as I was in my first year without any sort of details. I'm a very detail oriented person. So I truly believe mentors really help. And that's kind of why I started these programs, is because in my first year, I did make a lot of mistakes, right? I probably was spending a lot of time on things I didn't need to spend my time on, and vice versa. And I want to help other people, because once you quit your 9 to 5, which I have, it's like the grass is so much greener on the other side. I'm sure you can relate to. But my 2 programs are for 2 different types of people. So I have 2 different ones. One of them is called the B&B Management Fast Track course. So it's an at-home course. So you can buy the course, take all the modules right at home at your own pace. It comes with a private Facebook community where there's ongoing support with other students. There's resources, templates, scripts, recording, all that kind of stuff in an online portal. So you have access to all of that. That's available all year long. You just, again, can buy that at any time. I have a second program, a group program, which is 12 weeks long. It's just like this in Zoom. You also have an online portal with the Facebook group and all the resources, but it's more for people that don't know anything about the business. So the B&B Management Fast Track course is made for people that either are already hosting because you own your own houses, or you're doing rental arbitrage and you want to expand into management. So that's the perfect course for that, because it just takes your existent knowledge as a host and pivots into management specific. The group program is made for people that know nothing about hosting, don't own any properties, don't do real or rental arbitrage, and are completely starting from scratch. So that's actually run 4 times a year. So I do a launch every quarter. So all this information you can find on amandafardella.com. You could see the links for the different programs, so you can learn more about them. And yeah, that's just kind of what I'm really passionate about and focusing on now.
Yes. And all those links will be included in the description below. You can use our code, which is the S Factor, if you want to sign up and get a discount. And I've gone through some of the programs already, and I can tell you right now, there's a lot of value here, especially for anyone who's starting out. So speaking of starting out, what does one need to have in order to be successful, you think?
So I would honestly say, if you want to be successful in this, I'm assuming it means like personality trait wise, persistence is really the only thing that you need. I think that I always tell my girls that I teach, I'm like, if entrepreneurship was easy, everybody would do it. So if you have the tools that you need and you're determined to do and work for yourself, like, just be persistent, whether it's this business or any business. Just don't give up when things get a little hard or you get confused, because you're just going to be successful if you just keep pushing. So just don't give up. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Those are good words to go by. Never give up. Excellent. So I guess one of the last things that a lot of people would be curious to know is that why would you say that short-term rental management is better than, say, long-term rental management? What do you see some of the benefits?
Short-term rental management, number one, is just, I would say, more fun. It's turnover. There's a lot of fulfillment, and seeing all my reviews where people are having great times and telling me about their memories, and it just actually has a fulfillment to what I do, where I'm actually feel like I'm helping and making people happy. Probably most importantly, for those of you that are actually wondering if this is something you want to do versus long-term rental management, long-term rental management is structured so differently. So you kind of get like one flat fee when you find a tenant, and then a very small portion of the rent every month, right? So it's not very financially rewarding when you compare that to short-term rental management, because, for example, like the summer is so busy that like you can make different types of money from every house. Like I have some houses that are over $1,000 a night. I have some houses that are $200 a night, right? So when I'm taking a percent and it's 20% or higher normally, just think about how lucrative that can become like very quickly, versus long-term rental management is not nearly as lucrative because there's not really much work, right? I'm sure people live in houses and they don't reach out to the management company for 3-4 months at a time. So that's why we get to charge more. There's more work, but it's all done remotely. Like everything I do is from my phone. I still travel and just text from my phone. It's a very easy, maintained business. Plus, like you can change the prices, right? So the prices I charged for my first year at the same house, what if that house puts in a hot tub? Then I just charged a lot more and I just made more money for something I didn't even pay for, right? So it's very financially rewarding when it's not really something that you obviously have to put out any money for. So it's more money, it's more fun. You can be creative. I partner with wineries locally for bottles of wine for fun, and I have great relationships with my cleaners. So I think if you're looking for a career path that's actually lucrative and fulfilling as a person, I would say short-term rental management is like hands down the better option.
Okay. A couple of final things before I let you go. One is you mentioned the 20% number. Would you say that's more like the industry average?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely industry average. The industry average for long-term rentals is usually under 10%. Mm-hmm. To do long-term rental management, also, you normally need like a realtor license in most states. Okay. So it's not as easy just to start. Mm-hmm. There's more process behind that. But yeah, to answer your question, 20% I think is the industry standard. So to put that in perspective, if you have a house that's $200 a night and they only book for one night, you keep $40 is how that would work. So even if you only had someone staying for 3 nights, your 20% would be $120 just for you to basically send check-in instructions online. So that's really how easy like that is.
Okay. And obviously, as you mentioned, no need for licenses or registrations or nothing like that.
Nope. And obviously every state's a little different. So I will say I've done a lot of research on exactly how to set up the business the right way so that you're not doing anything that you shouldn't be. That's why I actually don't. I've had homeowners say, if I buy other houses or I have other houses they already have with long-term tenants, can I manage that for them? And I do nicely say, I need to have a license to do long-term rental management because I can't accept rent. So a lot of what goes around that legally is you can't accept rent from the tenants. But when you're doing short-term rental management, you're not the one accepting the rent, right? Airbnb is essentially acting as the broker on your behalf because you're not actually handling any of the transactions. So that's why it's different.
Perfect. And thanks for clarifying that. One final thing. Which cities are you managing your properties in?
So right now I'm in the Pocono Mountains, which is in Pennsylvania, Eastern PA, right outside of Jersey. And then I obviously started my company in Washington. So I used to do Washington State and Seattle. And just to give you guys some perspective, like when I moved to PA, kind of randomly, I still managed my short-term rental properties from Pennsylvania, which is 3,500 miles away. So like Seattle's on the tip of the country and I'm on the tip of the other side of the country, and I was still able to manage it remotely from my phone. So the opportunities are pretty endless.
Right. So this would be perfect for anyone looking for a work from home opportunity.
Yeah.
Actually, it's work from anywhere kind of opportunity.
Yeah, because you can also do co-hosting and manage virtually, which a lot of my clients do that as like a second income option. So once you kind of get your foot in the door, you start to be creative about like where this can go. Like I do like design, right? So sometimes I'll actually help homeowners furnish it and charge for that. I do consultation services and I charge for that. So even though my main service is management, like I still have other pockets of services that I offer that just bring in additional money.
Okay, excellent. Amanda, thank you so much for the information. You have added so much value to anyone who's watching this. And I wish you all the best with your business.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was so happy to be on here. So again, go to my website. I have a Facebook group on there and feel free to reach out anytime, anybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Thanks for watching. We really appreciate that. If you like what you saw, then give us a like. If you want to see similar kind of videos, then subscribe to the channel. And comment below if you want to see any kind of professional featured on a future episode. And finally, if you want to sign up for any of Amanda's courses, all the links are in the description below. Use our code, the S Factor, in order to get a discount. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.